from the public, which from my experience, I was very anxious about. So, I was very cautious. We had a facilitator to keep things on track. But really the charrette process was what went into it prior to the event. We invited 242 abutters. We had 2 articles in the newspaper about it. We had 2 articles in our intercompany publication to invite employees to be a part of the process. And it's all about workforce housing. And so on Thursday night when Michael B. and Sally were there, it was good. I initially was concerned that 20 or so public attended when we invited the whole community, but after time people have convinced me that that is a real positive because there's not a lot of that opposition. And then Friday itself was, the mission was to put together 2 conceptual designs, one of which borrowed or an easement or deeded pieces of our corporate building off to the 25 acres to allow for green space and to allow for parking. Parking is a very big issue, 1.3 parking spaces per unit. There are ways to get allowances, density allowance, one of which is having a bus route, which I do have an appointment next week with Coast Bus to see if they're interested. It sounds like they are. So we came out of it with 2 designs, one of which was about 400 units, the other of which was about 275 units. It was an outreach, and this is the things that we're talking about at the task force here and I thought it was an extremely effective outreach. It gave a deadline to Al's comments. It pushes us to a June 20th, June 21st, really a deadline. It got our mission out into the public. We were able to invite many people. Part of the charrette, the city of Portsmouth was there. There was zoning board. Mike and Sally were there. Michael and Sally were there. There was Dover Housing Authority was there. Portsmouth Housing Authority was there. So it really gave us an opportunity to really announce our mission. Where do we sit today? Well, now it's time. To Al's point, none of this is success until we put a shovel in the ground. We want to be prepared to go in front of New Hampshire Housing in June of 2025 with 9% tax credit application, pre-application. It's distributed in September. The bill then wouldn't go into 2026, again, to Al's comment that, this is stage 1 on zoning, but then it's a couple years thereafter if we're lucky to get a shovel in the ground. So all in all, I think it was something that we all could learn from. I was very anxious about it. I came out of it very relieved. And Taylor is an expert. We have her right on the task force here. She did an incredible job with the organization and just the media coverage on it. I think we should learn from it a little bit, and I think it would be a great exercise for Durham to have almost a pre-charrette, regarding zoning, and it gives us a deadline. It invites the community. It gets our mission out in front of everyone. We're very transparent. So all in all, it was a big success, and I learned a ton from it.
Besides the parking, what were the other major concerns? Is there any like overriding ones besides parking that really stood out with you from the abutters?
No, not really. There was really three concerns. One was the traffic that currently goes down Long Meadow. So there is a plan to kind of slow that down a little bit. It's not so much the volume of traffic, it's the speed. So that was number one. You know, the site itself is a wonderful site because there's around the site there is good green space, so it shelters apartments and modular mobile home development. One of the abutters didn't want to be connected within the project, which we wouldn't do that unless there was an asset for them, like Nature Walk, because there is 10 acres of wetlands that can be utilized in some ways. We'll figure that out. And they didn't want to see boxes. And I think they did mention West End, which I don't like to pick on West End. I thought it was a nice development, but they want some uniqueness to the development. So Al, no, there wasn't really a lot of opposition. I think as we go forward through the TAC and through planning board and city council, we will get opposition, but we always can refer back that we were transparent. I mean, we invited you, we wanted you a part of the process. So, it accomplished a lot. It checked a lot of boxes for us. It's still the beginning. I mean, there's a long way to go, but I was happy that, the public now knows about it, and the media coverage was awesome. They really did a lot of work for me in that regards. They got our mission out, and so we know folks that are in the media that we could utilize too here in Durham. I think it's something that we all can learn from, and I think it would be, along with what our plan is, to create a pre-charrette and to put a deadline on it and put invitations out to the public and get an article in the Fosters and just get the momentum going and the awareness. I think and a deadline. I think it really could help us.
Yeah, it was interesting process, and you guys did a great job. I think. I mean, really, you encouraged as much as you could, and I like the idea. Like, well, not a lot of people came, but that meant there wasn't a lot of opposition, because it's usually the opposition that show up.
Right.
And so that's a good sign. And I think that, we tend to listen to the loud, the squeaky wheel. And so that was good. And it is a beautiful site. And, you all miss the opportunity to get inside that corporate building on Lafayette Road, the mirrored fortress.
I mean, to your
It's
point
pretty
though,
cool.
Sally, like and Mike, it's helpful to find out what the opposition is
Yeah.
against you.
Yeah.
And I think what's pretty interesting is it didn't sound like anything horribly insurmountable there.
Yeah.
I mean, the parking, the only thing I would throw out there, because I know in the legislature that what came out is it possible to have off-site parking, and can that mitigate some of your 1.3 on-site, that you get a better mix of the design if at all possible?
Yeah, that's exactly borrowing or easement or deeding a piece of our corporate for that purpose. It would be across the street, so it's considered off-site parking, but there could be an allowance for that, a density allowance, and it's creative thinking. And also, to the comment on our corporate building, I mean, we want to kind of bring it down a little bit too. It's not our nature. It's a beautiful building and all, but we're all about low to mod within our community. So, our CEO is very, very, very open-minded towards it all. So,
Yeah, the people there were very friendly, and you had and very realistic too, you know, like the comments of like, well, asking, you had these groups of people, what would you like to see? You know, so they were very open to what people would like to see in a development. And then the reality of like, well, what, you know, we could have this wish list, but we all have to pay for it. And there is that balance, is reminding people, and this is one thing that I think in Durham people need to understand is, we can have a wish list of what we think is going to be wonderful, but it costs, and we have to, there is a pathway. Are we going for this great expensive housing that has all these bells and whistles, or are we going for something that is going to be more affordable to the average person in the area? And so we have to pick our, you know, our, Michael?
Oh, Michael, that was a great explanation, very helpful. And I think, as people have said, you know, I know it can be disappointing. You want 100 people to come, you put all that. You know how people are, creatures of inertia, but you got a lot of great feedback, a great discussion, and importantly, you did an important first step. And in the future, people complain, you know, we had a charrette, you didn't show up. But I just want to ask you two things. I know it's very early, but can you share what your vision is at this point for the site? Number of units, how much affordable, rental, for sale, general design things, you know, your vision and financing. I know just at this point, your vision. And then secondly, just what the next steps are.
Sure, yeah, the vision itself, you know, again, still up in the air, but it's, we're after affordable housing. That is the really difficult piece here, and it's really tied to workforce housing. And, you know, I have some questions regarding our proposed ordinance here, but nonetheless, the vision would be, I think we'll probably settle 300, 350 if we're really, really lucky in this regards. I think what we would love, it's really an interesting concept because the tax credits really only allow for about 45 units per cycle, and the cycle is annual. So you've got phasing involved, and right now we're looking at about 200 units as, you know, garden style apartments, which could be 100% affordable. And what we're looking at is the 60% AMI average. So we can have 30, 40% AMIs, 80, 90% AMIs. So we're looking at 200 units in the center of the parcel. There's a pond out back. We are looking possibly to have market townhouses there, which our senior staff is a bit opposed to, but it would be to subsidize affordability and the infrastructure. And then on the road frontage, have more like row houses. So you're looking at, that would be that 300 type. So, you have 50, 60 row houses. You'd have 30 or so townhouses. You would have, 200 apartments. And I think with that, we're looking at about a 75% of the development being affordable. Again, I'd like to note that our senior staff really would like to see it 100%. But the tax credits in the state of New Hampshire right now in 2025 are limited. On a $60 million project, you can probably get 8.8 million in tax credit. So it's what is that, 20 some odd percent of the development itself. There's not a lot of money there. So there's a big gap. And then you can go for congressional funds. There's PACE funds. There's your capital stack is complicated. So that hopefully, Michael, that answers it's going to be a phase because of tax credit availability. It could be 2 or 3. I would love to see the build out in 3 years, but we'll see how that all kind of plays out. And second question, where we go from here. It's a very interesting. First of all, I have to push this forward. You know, the community now is expecting some results. So we're in discussions with civil engineers. We're in discussions with developers. It could be a 3 different type of development within the parcel. That being row house, that being apartments, that being market. One of the big things that I've found out is the subsidies for clean energy are significant this year. So, you know, there is a whole business model that can be put together for creation of energy to not only support the development, but also to sell to market. So it really could be a very, I mean, for us not to look deeply into clean energy would be, again, a mistake, and I don't think we'll ever go there. But right now, the subsidies in building that are plentiful, so much more than affordable housing, which is, you know, so combining the two, you might be able to get to affordability of 75% of the development. So where we go from here, Michael, is putting, I have a proposal coming from civil, I have a proposal coming from developer. I have to then put together my recommendation after, 6 months or so of discovery on this, and get our board to, you know, agree to a land trust, you know, a 99-year lease so we can capitalize our expenditure of the land over a long period of time, so it aids itself to affordability, and I hope to get this done within the next couple of months. So we need to start, if we're looking at, you know, June of 2025, which is, you know, a sort of a self-driven deadline, we need to be in front of the planning board, you know, in January. So, yeah, pedal to the metal now, Michael. We've gotten our shred done and a lot of the preliminaries. Now it's time to really, as they all say, get a shovel in the ground. And because none of this is successful until we do.
You know, Michael, you know, one of the things, I think it's the new Portsmouth Housing Authority building near their downtown where they had it, and they did like a mix of, you know, it's not all, I mean, because I think we tend to hyper focus on 60% of AMI and we got to get this many units, but when we looked at our RKG report, there's people below the 60% that are also trying to get in there. And so, I'm almost like the aggregate 60%, because would you be willing to take market rate to give yourself below 60% or pay for 60% to make the project work? And I think that's a trade-off that is a valuable trade-off and should be part of the discussion. So I know it's frustrating because the state doesn't give a lot of money to do this. They really don't, even though we've said it's a priority. We did give a lot with the Invest New Hampshire funds. There was a lot that came out, but nonetheless, with the tax credits and that, we need to invest more to help you guys out. But again, if you had to go 10% extra at market rate to get, like, say, a mix of, say, 30 or 40% below to get a better spectrum in your housing, I think that's a really good discussion.
Sally and I learned this at the New Hampshire Housing Conference a couple weeks back, right, Sally?
Yeah.
We learned that there is a new equation regarding that 60% average. So we are really looking into that. Right now, the management companies, it's new to them, so I'm not really sure if they're up to speed on that whole process of qualifying income. But, you know, we want to appeal to our disabled veterans, and, you know, they're not 60%, 100% AMI.
Yeah.
You know, and so if we can bring 20, 30% AMI and offset that with, you know, 70, 80% AMI to average out at 60, that is very exciting.
Yeah.
That we can now do something like that. So.
Yeah. There's income averaging they have. the management companies of these facilities, they're income averaging, so they have to cut to an average, say 60%. So they are able to, the same units, the exact same units, they will be renting out, say, somebody that's at 100% AMI or 80% AMI, so they can get in some 20% AMI and
Yeah.
30% AMIs, who are in dire straits. And we can't build units cheap enough to house 20% AMI. And so it is, people are thinking out of the box and figuring out how to do this and how to make it work, which is encouraging.
One other piece that I failed to mention is there is a mixed use element to
yeah.
this. And there is a commercial, we'd love to see, I would love to see a coffee shop right near the laundromat. And we're also talking about daycare.
For sure.
And, I've spoken to United Way about it. They're very interested in supporting, daycare is a huge issue for the working force. And that's part of our initiative also. So there will be a commercial influence on it. And how that's all going to pan out, that's still in design. There's buildings, outside of the development. There's, retail space within the development. But again, for us to really look at affordability, and workforce, we have to look at daycare.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I can't wait to see how it all comes out, so you can keep us posted. It's going to be exciting. It's a great site. It's a great site. It's a
I
handy
think
site.
the one thing I just wanted to, I read the Seacoast Online this morning, and we talked a little bit about how long it takes. And the Bed Bath & Beyond / Christmas Tree Shops property is a Portsmouth, not Newington. I know sometimes people have talked about it being a Newington. And Newington does have an identified, they've published that they have an identified location for workforce housing.
Yeah.
But they haven't quite finished, I don't think, everything there. But anyway, the developer that's put in the proposal for that area has reached out to Portsmouth to say things are moving way too slow. And the longer it's taking, the higher the risk of, not being able to complete the project.
Cost.
And they related it to, to just get the technical review done, they're like waiting on third-party analysis. And I think we've talked a lot about how do we create a flow that is predictable for developers. I know we've had it mentioned by the Randolphs and the difficulty just in Harmony Homes, let alone in development. And I think we just need to be cognizant of some of the things that we get feedback on is how can we create goals on timelines that are reasonable, because it shouldn't take 6 months to look at the traffic study. And
Time is
especially when you've got stuff that's
Time is money, and
yes.
Mike Mulhern can attest to that from his own personal experience. But
Exactly,
the
but-
longer you keep, the operating costs are expensive, and it can make a difference between something happening or it being affordable or not, or needing to change your whole perspective.
These
Because-
are going to go market
Yeah.
rate. They're not even trying to get affordable, and the delays are going to be too challenging for them if
If they don't
it
get going.
continues that way.
Because of the cost. Yeah.
It's all the
Taylor,
delays.
you had.
So it was interesting. Anyway, it was not a very detailed article, but it was definitely worth listening to. And
Yeah.
it reinforces the challenges that they have in some of the towns that are extremely controlling. And we have to find the right flow and have some kind of, every time I ever had to do a project at work, it had to have a timeline.
Yeah.
And if you said it was going to take 2 weeks to get something done,
2 weeks.
it had to be 2 weeks. And we shouldn't have a goal that says, well, we should be able to give you approval in 6 months when you're only dealing with, 3, what are the things that we need to get this going and going from there. But anyway, just
Yeah.
because, when you think about, you've been working on this now for however long, even at the concept stage, and you're talking about, 2 years now before anything's really done. And it's just really crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Taylor, you had, Michael, you have something to finish
Well,
up?
just one final comment. We all are very aware that there is a process to delay projects. And the process, by NIMBYs, not my backyard, and it creates an affordability issue for the developer. To Sally's point, a budget of it's 80,000 becomes 200,000 over this period of time and really does not aid itself to affordability. So there has to be some way to, silence those that are really part of just delaying the process so the developer walks from it. The developer has a crew right now. They want to put a shovel in the ground right now, not 6 years from now. So that's always a big concern of mine. I think Portsmouth does a really nice job, even with speaking from public comment. You got 3 minutes. If you forfeit your 3 minutes, you get 5 minutes. It's very polite. They have a timer. People don't cut you off, but people are aware that they got 3 to 5 minutes to speak. And what it does is it welcomes those that are in favor of the project. When you don't have time limits on public speaking, on public comment, it's taken over by those that are in opposition. So for us to start looking at something like that, that's a whole nother issue, but we're all aware that there's a process out there of delaying projects, so the developer just folds and leaves.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mike.
What I was going to say is we will have our charrette report finished by the end of July, and that will be sort of an overview of the whole process,
great.
all the feedback we got, the 2 different schemes that came out, as well as some of the other housing models that we came up with, or that the design team came up with. And yeah, that will be on our website by the end of July, and we'll be sure to send it out so everyone can take a look at it. But
Be great to see.
yeah.
Hey, Michael, do you know about the Gateway project in Exeter? On the same road, is that?
Epping Road.
Yeah, and it's so the person's coming in there. I think he got the largest chunk of Invest. He got $3 million from Invest New Hampshire. He owns the land. He's doing a large mixed-use commercial thing. It would be somebody really good to talk to, I think, for you.
I appreciate it. I'll reach out.
If you reached out to the planner in Exeter, he would be able to connect you with him. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move. We needed to start really getting something together. So we thought, well, what can we do? So we're thinking of the first phase of our outreach right off the bat would be to go to our committees and commissions, which we discussed here. It's a good opportunity to get some real feedback, get onto their agendas so we can talk to them and find out from their perspective, their concerns, what they'd like to see, and to talk to them, which really gives us a lot of there's a lot of people we can reach through that, and then the various people that watch those committees. So we went through some ideas, and I put a PowerPoint presentation together. So I want to go through that with you guys and then have you comment on where you want to tweak, what you want to add, whatever. But we discussed how deep in the weeds do we want to get? And I don't want to get deep in the weeds. I don't want this committee to go to use our outreach to explain the RKG report, or to, I want to just say, these are the basic facts. The state has said this basic fact. There are some basic facts that came out of the report that we've learned from, and these are our options. So I'm going to run through that now, if you don't mind, the PowerPoint.
Sure.
And then we can go through, and then I gotta wait. I know you guys can do it.
It's always an adventure when someone has a computer trying to get it up.
So, can we get the slides up, DCAT? There we go.
There we go.
So, this is, of course, again, this is what I need your feedback on, or Heather and I need your feedback on. If you want to add anything now, Heather, do you have anything to add?
Nope.
Okay. So, this is the front. And this is what we'd be presenting at the meetings. Get on their agendas. I would love to be on their agendas in August and September, some of these people.
Or you could even, there's meetings coming up in 2 weeks in July.
Yeah.
Depending on when you want to
We
start.
can get on their agendas, but we need to have this. So, the first one was to say, just to explain what is workforce housing. And I used the definition that we're using on the new housing, the workforce housing amendment. So housing which is designed to provide a broad range of living options that meet the needs of families and individuals that represent the majority of New Hampshire's diverse workforce. Workforce housing projects often include a variety of dwelling types suitable for households, oh, I need a space there, with different needs and incomes. Okay, I gotta fix some wordage there. Oops. So, comments?
No, I think it's good to start that way. Like you said, just gotta fix a couple of typos.
This is what it, yeah, I
Yeah,
gotta
no,
fix
it's
them.
good.
All right. Eileen, you any comments on it?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So then I get the next slide, and I don't want to be, controversial, but this is a slide. This is a slide from the state of New Hampshire with their numbers. All right. This is the same slide that actually I think I got this from the New Hampshire Multifamily Housing Conference, and Zonda put this out here, and this is all New Hampshire housing. It shows the need and the projections and what statewide we're looking at. All right, so for people to understand why we're talking about this, and these are the actual numbers we're looking at statewide. And I don't want to have to defend it other than that this is what the state of New Hampshire did. They came up with their route policy and their planning department in the state of New Hampshire, and this is what politically your state came up with. Those are the numbers we're going on. If you don't agree with them, fine, but this is what we've got.
I mean, the only thing I would add to that is that every community has a housing problem right
Yeah.
now. Everybody.
Well, that's
It's
what.
not just us, or it's not Rochester. Everybody's experienced it because of the breakdown. I also, to your point, because I watched like the town council thing on RKG, and it's like you start putting numbers like 455, 720, 3. It's like, and everybody's. So this was an unprecedented combination of all of New Hampshire planning departments working together. I mean, people who are criticizing the data, those are professionals that are doing the data, and if you can come up with something better to show that, which I
Please
think
do.
we had a lot of micromanaging trying to do that.
Yeah.
Please show me your credentials and how you've worked and done anything. Because getting caught up between 300 and 500 is a complete waste of time.
Yeah, and the outreach that we did whenever we did it last spring, gave us some personal stories that say, yeah, it's difficult finding housing, and yeah, we know we're spending more than we can. But this just gives it, all right? So,
Couple comments.
go back.
It's confusing at first glance why there are two.
well,
The 2040 thing?
Yeah, they're showing the
Yeah, it just-
2030.
It just took me a second to realize we're looking at within the next 5
Yeah.
years and within the next 15 years.
Yeah, so,
I don't know if there's a way to
well,
maybe describe that. As
yeah, I
as
think
you're
we have to
showing slide.
describe it because this is one PDF.
Slide.
I also
Yeah.
think the phrase, the shortage is severe, we should take off. It seems kind of opinionated, and the numbers speak for themselves.
I would just say
Concerning?
this. How about the shortage is widespread?
Oh, let's just.
Or
yeah.
statewide or something like that. I think that, again, that reinforces.
Well, I think that real estate would be better put towards explaining where the numbers came from, saying these are, this is from the New Hampshire state experts, to your point.
Yeah. No, I
When
think
Paul
that-
says real estate, he means the real estate of the state.
I agree.
Yeah, I
think-
finally got that.
Yeah, I
It
think
only
that-
took me a second.
I think Paul is right, because it's like, these are the preeminent planning things in the state are telling us.
Explaining
Yeah.
where the figures come from. Okay.
Say that again, Paul, exactly what you said on the.
That space where it says the New Hampshire housing shortage is severe.
Change here.
Would be better used for explaining that these numbers are coming from the experts, the state
Stratford Regional
experts.
planning and
Not
business.
from,
Us.
Yeah.
not from, that, to try to reduce the controversy over what the numbers, who
Yeah.
came up with the numbers and what they,
Okay.
Yeah, there's a disclaimer down the bottom that said, but I think if we put that up there.
Yeah.
this, this is up here where it says New Hampshire housing shortage is severe, to
Yeah,
change that to that would be
that
better.
source
Yeah.
line in much larger letters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be better.
You could do that as 2 separate slides. I think having 2 of them is
Well, it's
is
hard.
a lot.
It's
It's
hard
easy.
to, it's hard to divide it out without having to completely recreate the slide, and I was trying to like not have to recreate the
I
slide.
think it's fine. I mean, it's only
So,
gonna
I
be a
think it's
flash
fine.
anyway. It's just boom, you know.
And
you're not
it's
gonna
a
spend
point
time on it.
we pause on and we talk about it. You know, I have a cursor that people can see moving around. Anyways, I didn't want to have to completely recreate the slide. I had to create some slides, but I didn't want to have to recreate all of them. Okay. Anyways, so the next slide is, this shows our future housing needs in Durham. And I didn't want to get into, I didn't want to get into how this number came about. They can go watch the DCAT. No, I'm not going to do it. But future housing needs, and this is based on the housing needs analysis by RKG. All right.
It's up there.
And it just, Durham's adjusted 2040 future housing needs for non-student population is 455 units. That's as basic as you get. And people can ask questions about this. Where'd you get this? It's in the report. Go read it, or go watch the DCAT on the town council meeting, and you will see how they came up with it, but I don't want to explain that here.
So I get almost the exact number using a really simple formula. You take the total number of units that you had before on the previous slide,
Yeah,
and then you modify that by Durham's percent of population in this state.
Yeah.
and there you get it.
And you
Yeah.
get 500. change.
Close enough.
Close.
Close enough. Okay, so this is where we get into, we are a community. So why does Durham have to act? Because people will say, why is it our responsibilities? And I'm like, my suggestion is, Heather and I discussed, I put it down, Durham is part of a regional community, including Stratford and Rockingham counties. We are part of that community. All right, Durham residents work in a wide geographical area. It's the way if you have better words for that, please give it to me. Because Durham residents do do work outside of UNH. They travel to various places in the area. Some travel to Manchester. This is how, some travel to Boston. We're traveling all over. Not everybody works at the university. And Durham residents are serviced by people that live and work in a wide geographical area. When we go to Lowe's, we go to Lowe's, we go to Portsmouth Hospital, we go to Dover Hospital, we go to, garden centers in Rollingsford. We're all over the place. We don't just live and breathe and work in Durham. There is no bubble that I'm aware of over our town. Any comments, changes, suggestions?
Well, there's others you could have. Something about Durham residents and members of the community have very few options to live in Durham.
Well, this slide was to show why Durham why is it our responsibility to also act? That it's not just Somersworth, they need to put in housing. It's better suited for housing than Durham.
Should we put the fourth one that also says, the state of New Hampshire has assigned every town? Because, I mean, basically, every town does have a goal. It's not just us, right?
Now, I think that was part of all the regional planning commissions coming together. They had the funding to do that Roots Policy Committee. And so I think that would be a good slide because
I would just put it like as the last one because it's important that we're part of the community. Oh, and by the way, everybody has a goal.
State of New Hampshire, so how you want to
Do we
word
need
that?
the top one?
I think it reminds, personally, I think it does remind people that we're all
But it just
in it.
says
But
the
maybe
same
we
thing
don't
the other
need
two
to.
do.
Yeah, we can maybe lose the top one and then add the
Yeah.
state of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the recent state housing needs assessment assigned goals for each community.
So the state of New Hampshire
Regional planning committees
regional planning,
assign or generated goals for housing goals for each community.
generated housing goals
What?
So this is coming.
Very excited
Wow.
by that.
No, this
Sort of a brain
is this
thing
is a
as we
master
open
plan
it.
link. The majority many Durham workers cannot live and play here.
Well,
Durham's
how-
supposed to, one of our, live, work, and play here in Durham.
By a master
They can't live here. They can work, but they can't live and play.
Do you want to give me some verbiage? I'll be happy to put it up.
Why don't you email it? Why don't have him email whatever.
If you have
phone number it is.
something and you want it, yeah, if anybody has something and they can't come up with it right now, or you want to add it to this one?
I don't know where I don't know what your next slides look like.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly
So-
which slide it should land on, but this was a possibility because basically Durham, we could say the Durham master plan calls on us to act on it.
Well, we could add 4, I can create 4.
You could have a half a dozen.
I can
Don't get
create,
too busy. Keep it like.
well, that's the same.
I like the idea of 3. I think if we go with more, unless they're really short, I mean, they're not going to fit, it will get too crowded
I can
on
make
that.
them smaller.
Or you could have
Then
two
they get hard
slides.
to
Then they
read.
can't be-
Yeah.
There's so many, I mean, moral and legal,
But I
master
think-
plan, welcoming community, diversity, growth.
Yeah, but we don't want all that. If there was a
I
link
think
to
the
the
master
master plan.
plan one's going to be important to a lot of
It
people.
is. Everything you do is supposed to be derived
A
from your master
link.
plan, so.
To master plan. So according to, maybe what? According to,
I would say, let me go and go through the master plan and find the exact
okay,
thing. But there is one where, Durham's supposed to be a place where we live. It might be even in our vision, right? And I would just take that out and like highlight the live, make it big bold letters that this is what we're trying to focus on
I could
here.
create another slide to focus just on that.
Oh, let me
to come
see.
right after
Let me
that.
find what. Yeah,
Yeah.
let me
I
find
was
where the
gonna
master
say that
plan
makes
comes
sense.
in on that, because that might be worth a slide all its own.
You know, that whole master plan thing, you just spit out like whatever that was, 6 or 7 things, the diversity, the this, and that. You could actually put that in a wheel, with the.
True.
Yeah,
And all it does is say those things that are coming out of the master plan, and it just as a whole says, these are Durham's needs, and then the pie goes all the way around.
or Durham's vision, Durham's own master plan.
I'll
You-
take some time to go
And
through
send it.
the master plan this
Okay.
week. My next couple of days are really busy, but I'll get
Okay.
it done this week.
All right,
So,
and I
that's
can
good.
see what I can do about graphics. Okay, so that's that one. And then the next one really just goes into what's happening in Durham. Where we are. We're a college town that has a disproportionate share of non-family renters. All of this is coming from the RKG. Families are leaving town. People age 34 to 54, population declined 32% since 2011. That was from 2011 to 2021. We are limited to census report data, and that came out in the RKG report. That number, I think, is significant. I think people need to be aware of it.
I think that's really significant because if you look what we did, look at the entire town's justification of zoning changes. I've heard a gazillion
Family
times,
units.
we built 2,000 units of student housing so we could open up this other housing for other people. And we have, by the way, a 3 unrelated ordinance also to try to, that limits investors and students from taking on single family housing. And that shows it didn't work.
And
That shows what?
It didn't work. It didn't work. It's like your idea was, your thing was, we want to open up all of this other housing for other than non-students, for families to move into town, and it didn't work.
And they're not, yeah.
It didn't work.
This is why I doubt I'm not tied to the 3 unrelated at all, because in my opinion, it made it worse. Because you, up until very recently, you could fund a mortgage on 3 rentals. So you doubled the number of houses that were being put into to serve that part of the community. And you drove families out even worse.
It's expensive to buy in Durham. and
But I think
not a lot.
that's a really important slide because you know, as we move forward, I thought that was supposed to be something that we were encouraging, or that's at least, I mean, yes, the third thing, we did experience 18 to 24 primary growth of students. That was great. And we got $100 million of tax assessment, which kept our tax rate pretty level for 4 years. But our primary goal, and I've heard this, and not only were we saying this about Durham, we're saying, well, we opened up housing opportunities for other communities. But when you look at that second thing, we didn't really do what we were trying to do.
We didn't gain anybody.
We didn't.
I'm wondering here if we should add the increase in, we have had an increase. The only other increase other than 18, our population gains in ages 18 to 24 were primarily new purpose, and I wanted to have that purpose-built student housing, because it is purpose-built student housing. It just doesn't get turned into workforce housing. It doesn't work that way. They're not designed around that. And but I'm wondering if we should add the.
I think so, because
the old
Riverwoods
people.
was one of our most significant projects of the last decade. It's a huge building, and, you know, so, I mean, when you look at the RKG report, we built
They have
a lot of
numbers.
18 to 24-year-old stuff, and we built a lot of over 55 stuff, and that's why number 2 is sitting there. We didn't address number 2 at all. In fact, it got worse.
That makes sense to do that.
Yeah, I think adding.
Because that rounds up the whole,
all the numbers.
all of the numbers.
Yeah, it then covers all the numbers. Okay, so
But then it really highlights how important it is to have that affordable housing or workforce housing, because you're really applying that into, you know,
this
25 to 34
yeah.
to 54 actually, but.
And because I think I'm pointing to it like you can see.
Oh, yeah.
This number here,
Which one?
the middle,
Okay.
I'm gonna find it.
So I would just,
It's not pointing.
It's my pointer's not showing. Anyways, the families leaving town, the 34 to 54. That really highlights the fact of that missing middle.
Yeah.
We know what we don't have. Anybody that has ever looked closely at what Durham has for properties knows we're missing housing that age bracket. And that's your child rearing age bracket. That's when you're having babies.
It's, I would put a title on it, something about demographics or demographic changes. And, you know, what is Durham now?
Well, we
It's seniors, it's
We can
college
do-
students, and then, you know, how much, it is interesting, it says families leaving town, but the middle demographic that we've always been strong with has been families with kids because of the school district.
But they're leaving.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is that number of people, when you say decline,
That's a 32%.
is that raw number, raw numbers?
It's in the RPG report.
Is that raw numbers, so there were 1,000 before and now it's whatever, 680?
You can look, yeah.
Or is that the percentage of families that dropped? I wonder if the raw number actually dropped.
that's focusing strictly on that age demographic,
age.
not
That age
number of
demographic.
kids.
But that statistic is ambiguous.
Well-
It's unclear whether the raw number of people or the percentage of families has dropped. The percentage of families could drop, but it's still, the raw numbers might be the same.
We can go in and see
I would just
how it was
clarify
so that
that,
when we
yeah.
can answer that. I don't think we have to put that in that, but that could be a
It could just say
talking
number
point.
of people.
No, it's very, so the problem there is that the first line, the families leaving town, makes the assumption that
Yeah.
that's because the parents are page 30. If you kill the first line, the second line is straight and true.
Yeah.
So lose family.
That's what the actual thing is.
Yeah.
That demographic line in the data
You're
has nothing to
assuming-
do with families. It strictly has to do with people in that
But
age
but
demographic.
the thing is, by definition, families, a lot of families fall into
that
So
category.
you're-
I
you're totally
understand,
right,
but
Bob.
that's what's confusing, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor.
No, but still, I'm assuming that means, again, the number, say there's 1,000 people, and that drops 32%, so it's now, 680 people. I'm assuming that's what that means, is the raw number of individuals.
Yes.
But that is ambiguous, because we might have had 1,000 people before, and we now have 1,010. But, the percentage of that group dropped from,
We have-
I'm assuming it's
In the report, there are numbers,
Yeah.
and I just gave the.
Right,
the
but I'm not sure if the number actually counts families. It looks at
looks
number,
age groups.
because the demographics look at
Cohorts.
the cohorts, 18 and under, 19 to 25, 35, 19 to, I forget exactly which one that
But
is.
the thing is, it showed that age group.
No matter how you
It's not-
slice it,
it's not-
that's not good.
You can't, yeah.
I'm assuming it's probably raw number.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, if you wanted to change it, you could say, people aged 34 to 54 declined 32% since 2011. You could say, this concerns us because this is prime family.
This is child rearing age.
Yeah, I
could
would
get
add
rid
a
of
line.
If I got rid of the families and I could then add in, then I'll have a little bit more space.
And then you could do the
And
To
then
the
you
older
do the fourth
people,
bullet.
so they can see that our population is seriously aging. We have young people because of the university, and we have old people because of they are moving in, and
But your third line explains that, because
They're
that's
moving up.
declining. Why is that declining? Well, because what we did is we built a lot of student housing, we built old people housing.
Just
We
put
didn't
them in
build
there
any of the
because-
ones for the,
Yeah.
we didn't build anything for that
Yeah.
34 to 54 demographic.
yeah.
Yeah, so on this, let's summarize what we're thinking about this. So we add the fourth bullet for the seniors. We'll strike, I don't know, are we going to take out the families leaving town line, or are we going to leave that in?
I will lose families leaving town because it probably is not a politically appropriate
Okay.
terminology. So I'll just leave that.
So that's going to kind of fill that box.
Yeah.
Any sort of title should probably be done, but we got, again, it's bare space. So if you shifted all that to the right, then you could sort of make a vertical title or to describe, descriptor of these points,
I can make more.
which could be like Durham,
Yeah.
And we
Or
could
just do
lose
Durham
college towns
demographics.
disproportionate share of non-family renters.
Just make it simple and say
Okay.
Durham
Or
demographic.
demographic
So you
trend,
can find
something like that.
yeah. So if we said demographic trends and then you kill the top line and you have the other three, then that slide sort of makes,
Excuse me, Judith has her hand up.
Oh, Judith, please, thank you.
Hi. Yeah.
I can't see anything.
I have a concern about taking out the one about the families. I don't know if that's the way we want to assign that number, but we're about the extremes. The students and the people in basically residentials. And people would then say, yeah, but how about the rest of us? Well, our friends can't live here anymore. And that's really what we are concerned about.
Yeah, so highlighting that concern.
Our 30, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to take out the words families leaving town but focus on that, the age group, the cohort group of 34 to 54
Yes,
decline.
yes.
Yeah. Because they are forced, they get, 34 means, that's a 20-year gap. That means they're not moving in and having small children. Or when they are finally at an empty nest place, they're packing up and leaving.
Right.
And oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Judith.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Michael.
No, you go, Judith.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think that this is what people are concerned about, that people with small children can't afford to move in here. And I think that that's something that we heard in our community survey. So I do think that we should pay some attention to that cohort.
Yeah.
I would like to tweak the way that's worded though. I don't like since 2011. Because that's data that we're using to draw that calculation isn't today's data.
Well, that's
So if we could say
I know, but-
between 2011 and whatever date that census data came
21,
from.
okay.
2010 and 2020, is that it? 'Cause
I think that's what it
every
was.
10 years, so it's
Yeah,
like.
between 2011 and
So in the
2020.
decade between 2010 and 2020, 34 to 54 cohort declined 32%.
Well, I would just say, replace since 2011 with between 2011, 2020,
I think it's 2021, yeah, or 20.
or 2021, whatever that number is.
I'll check what it is in the report.
And you know, that shows we're being, you know, we're not trying to play funny with the numbers by ignoring what's happened in the last few years.
Right. We're trying to show, and that's based on census reporting. So we can only go by our census reporting.
Yep.
Yeah, and we have just 3 types of development in Durham. We have a lot of student housing, rental. We have a lot of senior housing, both some is subsidized, but a lot of it's expensive. And then the third is single-family lots, and we're not even creating more single-family lots. And the ones so if you're not a senior, not a student, not an affluent senior, you've got to have a lot of money to buy an existing house, and we're not even creating more of that. At the moment, we're not creating more of anything.
We're creating wealthier people, and often wealthier people that are able to are coming in with equity already from another place, and are coming in here for other reasons other than the school district. People want to be here for the school district. We all know that. But my concern, and I think that number shows, over time, we might see, like in 20 years, we might see far fewer children in our schools because of the fact it's so expensive to live here. You're not moving here to have your kids. Okay, so I'll tweak those changes and then send them out. The next one really just gets into that conversation that we had about fair market rents, because this is what we'd be looking at. I think this is where the planning board is looking at fair market rents. I should probably highlight
Exactly,
ours.
yes, I was about
We're
to say that.
Portsmouth, Rochester, so the
Rochester.
second one from the bottom. I'm going to have to highlight that.
Or move it to the top.
Or
but
use
that's
just
a
But
separate
seven.
one.
if you, I mean,
You can
I don't
make
know
it
how
red.
you created the
Just-
slide,
I
if it's
think
a
it'd
cut
be
and
easier
paste
just to
then.
highlight, otherwise you're trying to snip it out of a fixed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
okay,
could create a whole,
that's
No.
all right.
That's a lot of
I
work.
would just
What-
highlight it, or even put a little
highlight
red
it.
star by it.
Yeah.
You know, just insert a shape.
If
That's
you can
actually
highlight it
probably
easy
even
enough,
easier
go ahead
than
and do that,
highlighting
you
it.
know.
Yeah.
and this would just be that, this is
Western
what we are
Rockingham.
realistically looking at for rents on the present zoning, and this is the reality, because I'm sure, my concern in town is that when people hear workforce housing or affordable housing, that some people are thinking that these buildings are gonna be built and are gonna be wicked cheap to live in, really inexpensive. Some people are even suggesting that these could be, these are poor people that are moving in, so they need to make sure there are rich houses around them so they don't feel poor. I mean, that's a paraphrase of what some people, I am hearing from some people, which I don't think is accurate. But this shows, these are the realistic numbers that are out there in this world right now. So you may not be aware that if you were trying to rent a 2-bedroom apartment right now, this is the rent level that we'd be looking at. This is not inexpensive housing. It's
I
not
think-
like everyone's going to get
Yeah.
a place to live for $800
I
a
think that's
month.
the other thing is, we look at our growing elderly population. They've been in their homes for a really long time.
Yeah.
And this is what happened to my dad, who's looking, to try and get out of his house soon. They know they're not able to cope. He says, "Do you know it would cost $2,000? Well, and of course in Reno, Nevada, it's going to be more than that. $2,000 to rent an apartment." I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to our world.
I think that's
Welcome to
important. I was
reality.
going to say, because if
Did
you
he-
bought your
Does
house
he know what
8
his
years
house will sell
ago and you have a 3% mortgage on your house, you got it before the escalation, you may only be paying $2,200 a month on your mortgage.
For everything.
And you look at this and you're like, wait a second.
My mortgage is less than $2,000.
So it's like so I think it's important for people, the people that are sitting in their existing family homes that have been here a while,
They
to
got-
understand what the market really
Yeah.
is now.
This is a reality, and because I'm afraid that when we bring the amendment out, people are going to be like, "I thought this was supposed to be work for affordable housing." No, these are fair market rents, and this is the reality of what we're looking at, because this is what we're gearing around there. Now, does that mean in our amendment, we would be encouraging for them to take vouchers. We would be encouraging, maybe in some of the affordable units, there could be some, the management of it, there could be some, you know, averaging. But this is kind of what we're looking at for reality as to what we're going to be paying or what people would be paying. So we're not creating subsidized housing. We're not creating, you know, poor people housing, as they put it. That's, pardon me for saying that, but you know what I'm saying. People are thinking that are maybe at 20% AMI or 40% AMI or even 60% AMI.
So these are below market, but not substantially below market. And this is our goal, right? These
Yeah,
are not
this is our
poor
goal and the
people,
thing.
but these are what HUD has determined to be fair market, that is more affordable, below market, but not substantially below market.
Yeah, and you know, the reality is it may be the best a developer can do because of the cost. And I
So
think that
we're not using the 60% area median income calculation. This is what would be used for
this
the
is what we're
ordinance?
kind of looking at the planning board, when we go through the, we're gonna have to get moving on so we can have a chance to review the amendment. But in the planning board level for that amendment, that's kind of what it's coming out to be, though there's some flexibility that you could have.
So the
some-
plan, you guys are, by your the
Cheaper.
definition of what you're using as workforce housing is fair I'm not sure what fair market means. Is that 100% of AMI? How does that
Yeah,
relate to
that'd be
60%?
It's about 100%.
No, it's less. It's
I think
less than
it's less
100%, but
It's a little less than
I've asked, this is actually what the experts at New Hampshire Housing and some other people
We
recommended
have
we
one sitting
use.
right next to you.
Fair market.
So this is less than market, but it doesn't really correspond, you know,
To HUD.
85% AMI, it depends on the bedroom size. But this is what's Dover uses and New Hampshire houses recommend for two reasons. One, it's by bedroom size, AMI is not. And two, it's a little higher than 60%, so
Yeah.
it helps developers.
I think, just off the top of my head, it's about 1,850 for a 2-bedroom for a family of 3. That's within shooting distance, so that's
HUD?
60% AMI.
Yeah.
What is 60%?
I think it's about
yeah.
1,850. It's 1,800-ish.
For 60%.
So this is a little up from the 60%.
Yeah, so, and that, what is that? Is that maybe a 2-bedroom unit, which is 2,000? So, yeah, it's a
Yeah, the
little
HUD
higher.
is a 2-bedroom apartment for 3 people. That's HUD. That's 60%.
And what they use these, Taylor, you might, if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, these are the fair market rents are often the numbers that housing vouchers are aiming at.
Right.
So if you're applying for a housing voucher, you get your voucher after waiting 5 years to finally get it. You get your voucher, and then you go out there and you find an apartment, and you're able to find a 2-bedroom apartment for you and your child. And that 2-bedroom apartment is going to cost $2,000. They're going to say, well, the most it's going to cost, it should cost us $2,000.
Okay.
So we will fund extra up to $2,000. So we're giving you a voucher, and we'll make sure we'll cover what you can afford. We'll cover up to that amount of money. That's what your voucher is good for. That's how they
Which
determine it.
theoretically, you know, as Paul
Yeah.
says, it should
Yeah.
be at market, but it's below market. Arguably, HUD should be at market because otherwise, if you have a voucher, landlords aren't going to take you.
No.
But I think it's probably always below, and it still is a good benchmark.
I think
It
that
is
one,
a
when
good
you
benchmark.
just explain it, because everybody,
Yeah.
I think the affordability and workforce housing are, it's so squishy sometimes. And I think, you know, because at one point we're throwing out 60%, just say why you're using it or what
But
this
even
is.
in there, in a development, depending upon what that developer is gaining, they may have some, you know, things that they have to follow. They may get some LCHIP grants, and then they have to do a 60%. So there's a lot, but this is what we're looking at for what we would like a developer to be aiming for rents. So then we have to make sure that we're providing the density to that developer so they can bring down that cost to rent.
And
Taylor.
we're doing averaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
just want to clarify one thing. So the FMR is what the maximum amount that a housing voucher will cover.
Okay.
And so sometimes you'll see that it's above 60% of like for the area.
Yeah.
Because they average out. It's not just like Durham. It's the Portsmouth, Rochester,
Yeah.
and that is a wider variety. And so the way that the voucher system works is you set FMR at what would cover, basically what would cover the rent for
The area.
the area, but it's like 40% of apartments in the area. And there's some really good fact sheets on fair
Okay.
market rent, but basically it's based on the voucher system.
Yeah.
So this is the maximum of what a housing voucher would cover in this area, and that can look different than like 60% AMI for a certain town within
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
broad spectrum.
Yeah.
The 60%, 80%, that gets really complicated. This is just a neater, and that's why the planning board.
I was
wanted
gonna
me-
say, what are you gonna, so you have the slide up, what are gonna be the talking points? And you better, if you don't keep it simple, you're gonna go down that.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
I would just say that a two-bedroom it's pretty simple. A
This is-
two-bedroom apartment is about $2,000.
This is what we're
Leave it at
aiming
that.
for.
You know,
This
just
is
Under
what-
our proposal, but not in the market, it's more than that.
I know. I'm just saying, like, we're shooting for the things that we're going to try to
Do
build.
we need it?
It's about $2,000.
I
I mean, I don't know
I
if
would like
this is
that-
really something that,
my concern.
this is for our outreach, right?
Well, this is, I put it in here, and my thought was education. I think that people have no idea, and when they see this come up, this will come up in the amendment, because this is what we're talking about, what a fair market rents. I think we need to be talking about, and I think you can keep it clear by saying, these are what we are hoping a developer can aim for. Therefore, we need to make sure we're giving them the density so they can aim for.
How many more slides do you have?
So,
Let's go on to the next one.
I would
No, the
just
reason
say-
I'm asking,
7.
this should be last.
Okay, we could put we could put that last.
Because it's such a potential rabbit hole, it should be last.
And it can kind of summarize.
Okay. Actually, it's yeah, okay, so let me go on to the next one, which is
What's it?
basically,
And then
good?
back to it. Yeah, I think depending on who your target audience is, it almost might be better to provide supplemental information about fair market rents with like a fact sheet and more information for people to dig into, so that you're not being peppered with a ton of really detailed questions.
Totally.
That people could then, if they're really interested, they could then go home and look into it in more detail. I think it alleviates some of the pressure on you and potentially eliminates the issue that could
so
come up.
that could be part of a little packet that we
or
distribute
like
to
a
them.
one pager, or
Yeah.
here's some additional resources. I think that
Okay.
might be easier for everybody instead of you trying to answer all these, because people are going to get very detailed in their questions, and FMR is confusing to begin
So
with.
I'll reach out to you for that
I
information.
can, yeah.
Okay, so the next one is basically, this next one is just like possibilities. So now we're gonna start talking about, right, so these are some pictures. I picked some, and Heather gave me some. I think these ones I got, anyways. So this would be like, let's talk about, what are we looking at? We're looking at multifamily examples. This is what multifamilies could look like. There's like a little cottage court, there's townhouse, this is what we'd be looking at for multifamily. There's probably like a garden style I should find too, but you don't want to over people. Increased density and infill. These are some examples. We have one, there's a house, it's a white house, and then next to it, there's some infill. They've taken the lot. So this one here, the one with the little brown houses there on the end, that was one single family home.
There's 2 ranches, one on each side at the beginning of that
Yep.
road going like that. And yeah, and they're old like 1960s ranches, kind of like my house. And then the infill, they put in 3 duplexes behind that where yards would have been.
So you see the first 2 things on the bottom are like ranches, and then they took all that land that they had behind it and subdivided it and created 3 duplexes. So they created 6 single-family home units.
And then on the left, is basically infill, where it was one house that was super old. Does he have that one there, or was that one on the left?
That's the one,
it is,
it's
yeah.
the white one, yeah, it's an
Yeah,
older house.
so it was, you know, that had a big backyard, and they had that one on the market, but then it had a big enough lot to add a second. And so that's only adding one, but that's talking about the whole infill thing, and
A larger lot was subdivided and created another whole other lot for another house with that they built. Then there's barn conversions to take existing,
that one was actually very interesting. I think it was one house with like a lot of farmland behind. Should probably get up. I can't get up, but so that has, as you come into the property,
which is that yellow area.
is the yellow area. Yeah, it comes up with single-family homes up the road, and at the very end, it has like 3 apartment buildings, like that white one below, but it also had the old barn, and that's the barn conversion. So it has a barn conversion with what looks like 4 units in the barn conversion. And then they wrap that with the other brand-new apartments on each, sort of on the other side of the curve of that road. And it has, I can't remember how many units per building. And then it has homes that are very, very similar to what you see, like, well, you don't have a picture of it, but I had thought that the development wasn't that far along, and I drove by it this last weekend. And it was amazing. It's almost fully built. The single-family homes are built, and all of this doing some final touches on some of the houses. And the houses are convenient, are on nice small lots. And yeah, you see the lot size is 0.16. And they're actually selling for less than, I hate to say this because it's horrible to think, they're selling for less than 500,000.
Yeah, they
But I
get
mean, my
into
God,
the-
I mean, so you're looking at 450 to, you know, to whatever, but there's 3 bedrooms.
That's
2
bringing
bath.
it close to the median.
They're putting in mini,
closer.
they've got mini split
Not
systems.
Wow.
So they've got, yeah, but they're on very small lots.
Where is this?
Dover.
That's in Dover.
That's in Dover.
It's actually
Rural
very
Dover.
interesting to go by. So if you have if you have people that are really concerned about the visual at the front of the street, whatever you're putting behind, you could put apartments by there, nobody's ever gonna see them. So I think there's lots of potential for infill, where people are very fearful, but they can be very nice. I had another one there, but I'm talking too much, but that was
Yeah,
really fun.
you know.
That was
But
really fun to
it's-
see.
No, I think that's important.
It's really hard to
good.
see the horizontal photos. I don't know what those are.
Oh, the top one,
The skinny
yeah,
long
the top
one?
one is.
Yeah, so the yellow
is
one's
hard.
not, is useless. And I mean, I know you're trying to show where it is, but you can't see anything.
Yeah, it doesn't, I don't
This,
know
the
what
the
you're
yellow
talking about.
middle.
That yellow one. And so
I
if you
couldn't
took
get the
that
yellow to
out,
come
then you'd
off
actually
for
be
some
able to make
reason.
the letters large enough that
You know
somebody
what?
could read them.
I'm wondering if we could have just the pictures and then, because you did add the map in there, like the pink one and the yellow one of that map.
Yeah,
Just
and
had
this
just
one
the
was difficult,
pictures.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
because that's off of the Dover GIS, and I was having some problems with it,
Maybe
I can-
lose the GIS
Yeah.
and then add just.
Yeah, I like the
just
first one, if you take
houses.
out the pink, take out the pink and the yellow, just show you could show, because that top one you're showing, you'll just show like an infill, and the second one is the density. I think even the third one is the density.
So Ryan might have some good maps of that. Like, do you remember because when Ryan came to talk about
Yeah,
this
that one was
project,
his.
Yeah.
when he gave us this outline, he has some good maps. I wonder if he has, like, this aerial shot is not bad.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not impossible to see from there, but that kind of gives a good overview. And then he has the map with without TDR and then with TDR. I don't know if you want to bring that into it, but
The one thing with the pink, and it's difficult to explain it, but that one is actually, it shows there's an older home out front, which is the lot 33 or whatever, and then it has address number 5, 7, and 9. That was all one lot with a long backyard going all the way down Gage Street, and 5, 7, and 9 are brand-new homes that got infill into
Yeah.
that lot.
I think
And
you're
they're
right.
actually really,
It's hard.
Oh, wait.
it's just hard to visualize
The one all the way
it,
to the
so.
right makes sense. The others, I don't think add much.
What
Yeah, the
about,
brown
there's
ones are
various
good.
things
The
that
pink and
we
yellow
can find
maybe.
online like,
Yeah.
you know, that I think are well done, like this is ADUs.
Yeah.
Well, I
This
want,
is cluster subdivision.
if you have some,
This is, you know.
I think if
density.
they're right
out of the toolkit.
Yeah, these are out of the
Yeah.
toolkit. This is missing middle. I'm
think
just
the problem
concerned,
is
Sally.
people don't
People will
visualize, though.
look at something like that and they don't know what to it's.
I
they won't
think,
know what
Well,
to
you know,
I think we
out
can-
of Plymouth, when they did their, because they were a HOP grant thing, and one of the things they said was most important was visualization of units.
yeah,
And so I think,
examples.
and that's what they did, what Plymouth did, of course, they did a walking tour, so like you could actually, this is duplex, you know, you can see it. But I think it's important locally to show pictures of what infill looks like, not the drawing.
Not that.
It's
Yeah.
like, so I mean, you can, let's get a picture of infill and density, I mean, we can find
If I
better
could
pictures.
make, if I could
that.
take this, the one with the green, the white house with the new house, if I get that a little bigger, I can show that. And I do like, I think the brown, the one on the far right, I think,
Works.
maybe lose the
I
picture
could
at the
make
top.
that, I could try that again was a snip out of GIS, and I was having a hard time fitting everything in. When it's bigger, like on my screen,
Yeah.
it looked fine. But until I gave you that snip, which obviously does not look very clear.
Eileen, you were gonna say something, yeah?
The slide before, I'm gonna get picky, but I don't like the buildings that are shown.
You don't
Yeah.
like the
Those
buildings?
duplexes or
Do you have
townhouses.
some others you could throw me?
I can look for some.
Yeah.
You know where's a nice
If
townhouse
people have some
cluster?
pictures,
Exeter. It's been on that walk we've done, they built that
Yes,
pocket
in the
neighborhood.
back.
It's in the back, it's there, it looks really awesome. I'll have to go grab a photo of that.
so if we
That's a
could
good
do,
one.
yeah, if people could get some photos that they think that are better, that's fine, just send them to me. I had to just kind of pull them up for the presentation. The next slide is I did show pictures of detached ADU because I think making that permissible by right, a detached ADU would create a lot of opportunities for a lot of people. And I think that there's some conversations we could have about that. I think that people worry about financing it, but I don't think they ever think about like taking some of the equity out of their own house. And why you could add a detached ADU for family purposes, and there's a lot of reasons, and there are ways of financing it. But if you already have an existing garage, these are showing detached. These are, like, would that be so bad, that middle one, would that be so bad to have your neighbor have? How about that little green one on the far right? Is that really, if there's room in your yard for that, is that really destructive to the neighborhood? The other one, looks like a garage, but it's an ADU.
No, it's both.
That's an ADU.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have those kinds of
I like the
pictures.
Yeah,
actual
yeah.
pictures, because I think then people see,
It helps.
yeah. Well, that's where somebody actually did that, so this is what they did. And I didn't put attached ADU, there are some pictures of but, because we already
We have
know
those
that.
already in.
But, because we're talking about, that is something we need to concentrate. I think our suggestions as a group would be to suggest that we allow detached ADUs by right, and that we allow more density in our residential neighborhoods as to create infill possibilities. There are some large lots and some of our that could create possibilities. So with those pictures, if you have any pictures you're interested in, send them to me. And then I can, explain where you think they should go, and then I can add those in. Then I want to get to this. Okay, so this is the idea of the outreach. I want their thoughts on it. I'm trying to explain some things, but I don't want to be ramming it down their throat. Now we have to talk. So what changes to Durham zoning code can you support? And I give them some suggestions to get them started. Like, would you allow multifamily housing, and where? Because right now we don't. Would you increase density to single-family home lots, and where do you think that would be appropriate? Would you allow detached ADUs by right? Where? Where are you comfortable with that? Allow residential in a commercial zones. Why not? And then what else? What else are you thinking? We're trying to get your feedback. This is this is their chance to tell us. What do you think?
Good.
Perfect.
Eileen, okay?
Is that the last slide?
Nope. Then I'm talking about, because we're talking about this, the planning board, what incentives should Durham offer? Should we consider some of the following? Cash contributions to gain more density. Say we have a designer or a developer and they would like to put in some more market-based homes. So, well, what are you going to get for that? What are we going to gain for that? You know, or they want more density to do something. Would they contribute cash contributions to the stewardship funds? We don't want any more conservation
I wouldn't
land.
include this slide. I don't think it's relevant. It's distracting and it's very difficult to do. What the goal is to make changes in the zoning ordinance, and they will stand on their own. In these zones, you can have a second ADU. In these zones, you can also have a detached zone ADU. This amount of infill will be allowed. That we won't get anything useful from that. I think I wouldn't include that.
Okay, the only thing so first of all, the one I would throw up there that wasn't on there is TIF. Would you provide cash contributions for infrastructure? Because
With the town, yeah.
Because that is, I think it is important to say, what are we willing to give to get what we want?
What is who willing to give?
The town.
The town.
That town.
What is the town willing to give? Because I
Are we
think
willing
You
to
mean the
use?
town would, you're saying the
What
town,
incentives would
the
the-
town would give cash
No,
contributions
Michael,
to
no,
stewardship?
Michael, listen. What are we willing, what incentives would we give more density to a developer if he made a cash contribution to a stewardship fund?
Maybe you should put the density incentives
Density
or
incentives.
something.
Yeah, I think it's like, when I think of
But I
what.
think it's, all it's trying to do is have people in a group brainstorm. That's all that's saying.
Yeah, we're asking people to say, what could we say? Because right now, like TIF would be,
TIF, you want to say TIF.
Should
Because
it-
would we be willing, would the town be willing to use money to pay for infrastructure in return for workforce housing? I mean, that's a huge thing.
So you are saying Durham would be paying for something?
Well, there's a couple, I mean.
Because that's not what this slide's supposed to say.
I think the bigger one are what tools would Durham use to get what we want is a better way to say it. And so the obvious ones that come to mind are TIF to do infrastructure. You could do 79E, obviously comes up. That doesn't cost us cash up front. Or, I mean, those are the two major tools that I would cover. Is there other, what else would you be
like,
willing to do?
what tools would you support Durham using to gain?
Oh, you're going to have a lot of education in there. I worry about that because really what you're trying to do is just get some ideas from the people,
Yeah, like density incentives?
like the density incentives. And if you start talking about
How about-
79E, then you're going to have to explain.
I wouldn't do 70. I would.
Whatever you just said.
Would we be willing to spend money on infrastructure to support a project? That's TIF. You don't even have to say.
Well,
TIF.
or how about this, like change, it says density incentives, question mark, or what density incentives, because that's really what it is. It's a density incentive they're paying for. It's just like, it's the same thing as Ryan Pope was talking about, their transfer of development rights.
Yeah.
And Judith, if you, I can't see where your hand is raised or if it is, so if you have something to say, just yell out.
She's no longer here.
Oh, okay, there. Or Michael, if you're still there, just yell out.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
So, with the outreach, is the goal of this particular presentation to help educate the public about what is going on and what the situation is, or to get feedback from them
Both.
about? Okay, both.
Both.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, to give them some basic information as to why we're doing this, because some people may not realize it, or they
And then
have
the feedback.
preconceived notion that, you know, and then to get some feedback on what they are willing, so that we can say, well, they do support housing, and they would like to see this, or they would like to see that.
And I think because we're doing this through the other committees, that's why the
It's all different
historical is like,
things.
oh, well, that'll be, you know, everybody's gonna have a different view, whether you're on the, if you're presenting in front of the ag committee, the historical,
Yeah,
Like,
whatever there.
oh, you mean if we allowed somebody to build a multi-housing unit, that they could give us $25,000 for fixing up one of our
Wagon Hill.
decrepit, to the Wagon Hill farmhouse. Or they want to build a more higher density in the rural area at our conservation subdivision. They're willing to give $25,000 to the stewardship fund, which we don't need any more land, but we sure need money to take care of it.
I don't know even know if that's legal.
It is legal. It's the same thing as transfer.
Where is, I don't know. Anyway, I said my opinion on this one.
I mean, I can see your point.
I think density bonuses should be for something that provides long-term gain, not a one-time.
Well, do you
the
want me
point
to
is we're waiting for other people to have ideas. I don't think we
Yeah.
need to analyze them now. Because that's just an example to get people's brains going in the meeting that you're at.
Well, we asked for, like, from the planning board, we asked for, like, ideas for incentives. There's only
So many
we're trying to,
levers.
like, well, why not? Why wouldn't a cash contribution to a historical fund be a long-term if it meant that we were able to put all that money into a removal of an invasive species? Or why wouldn't it be
Oh.
long-term if we use it for historical
So-
restoration of a building? It put a new roof on the old courthouse. That's long-term.
But why,
And it's just
why would
thought.
we, if we're trying to get a developer to do affordable housing, which is financially marginal, we're also going to ask them to make a contribution? Anyway, I thought at our last meeting, we talked about a half a dozen specific zoning changes we wanted to talk to the community about.
Okay, do we want-
attached ADU or detached ADUs in the RA, RB zones, a second ADU, cottage courts, infill density, increasing density from 3.5 acre minimum lot size, maybe allowing row houses. Those you could spend hours and hours on, and that's, if we are going to do, as Al says, some zoning changes, those are what we're going to be doing. And I really recommend, we're going to go to all this effort to outreach to half a dozen town boards and other neighborhood associations. I really recommend that we have the slides that are very focused. These are a half dozen potential initiatives and very clear, this is what it looks like, what do you think? And talk about those things. I'm afraid that this won't be very useful.
Do you
It'll
wanna
be
just
all
take
over
this
the
slide
place.
out?
I think you should.
Yes.
I actually do agree with you with this, because what we're just saying to the other people of this, these are the kind of things. This part, what incentives are we going to use? That's going to be the town
Yeah,
council.
yeah, we can
It's
just remove
like,
this.
Yeah.
they're going to have to
You're going to
decide.
you're going to have 45 minutes at the most with
Yeah.
the board. You need to be. These are half dozen things we're
Okay.
thinking of zoning
This-
changes.
this would be
very
more
clear, simple illustrations.
charrette
What do you
day.
think?
Okay, we'll just remove
Take
this
it
slide.
out, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
take
fine.
it out.
That's not a problem. I can just delete it. But I basically ended it, what are your concerns and what are your questions? And that would be them, like, setbacks, blah, blah, blah. We got to ask them what their concerns are and what are their questions at the very end.
Could you go, so would you put the slide that had the costs on it, the fair market?
Add that to
Would
the
you
end.
put that right after the pictures of the examples of the stuff?
Okay, so,
Yeah.
I would also take several lines out. We don't need that many lines in it.
for what? I actually removed half the page.
Yeah, well, having.
Want to just take out, just
I would,
focus in
I would just focus on us.
I would say us, maybe Western Rockingham,
Yeah.
and Hillsborough.
Is this a picture of the, because it might be tough to take out just the middle of that, like if it's an image.
I'd have to
Yeah.
I'd have to redo it. I'd have to.
Yeah, it's
I
just,
just don't know why I just don't put a red star next to those and leave it.
Way too
Yeah,
busy.
It's just a form, and what it's also showing is we didn't create the numbers. This is
Yeah.
this is a published document, and here we are in this document.
So you
It's
want
not-
me
it's-
to?
It's a slide
And-
you're gonna go like this way.
Yeah,
And-
I think we can, yeah, I can, I already took out half the bottom, there's a whole bottom that's gone. But it just gives them an idea, what it costs around the area. I could just focus in on ours completely and then just copy
think it's
paste
fine.
that
I wouldn't
line onto a
over-
different thing.
react.
I wouldn't
But
overthink it.
I don't, you gotta have it look, yeah. I think that, so you wanna put this on after all the pictures of the houses?
Well,
and we
because
could put more
everybody said they
examples
didn't
up.
like it where it was, and to put it at the end, I thought, well, it's the pictures, and then you have like the slide about.
What it costs.
Yeah, but then you had like, I can't remember what happened after this, after the pictures.
And then you went into possibilities.
Yeah, I had that, then I had possibilities,
Possibilities.
Yeah.
which were the pictures. And we could add some more pictures in.
I mean, after you do the pictures, then
And
you
then
could
have
do
this, what do
the
you
cost.
think?
Yeah, do the cost.
Do the cost
And
after
then
the
do, what
picture.
do you think?
What do you think?
Okay, so put it as before slide 12.
That's,
If you did just the zone with Durham, that would give you a lot more space to provide where the numbers come from and, you know, that other information. And, you know, and though it might be obvious from the title, it probably isn't going to be obvious to everybody that those numbers are updated annually.
Yeah.
Well, if you have something you want me to say about it, just send it to me, and then I'll add it in. I'm just concerned with what people must say, well, what is it in other places? You know.
it's perfectly,
I think for us to look at ours and realize that we're the next one cheaper to Boston is significant.
But you know, what is the purpose of these? Keep in mind, there's a half a dozen town boards that can be presented, and we had talked about presenting to a bunch of others, whoever, Tideline, neighborhood
Yeah.
associations. Isn't the goal of this, at the last meeting, we talked about a half a dozen potential zoning changes, the kind of things that we had in that original zoning amendment. And I really think that it's going to be a much more productive, as I say, you're going to have half an hour, maybe 40 minutes that these boards will hopefully give for this. Parks and Recreation, you know, they're going to say, all right, well, okay, I guess we'll give you half an hour at our next meeting. And I think it needs to be very pointed. And frankly, I don't think that slide will be useful. We want to get specific feedback. This is what we allow, presently we allow, we don't allow detached in RA and RB. Should we allow them? This is what ADUs look like, detached, attached. Should there be a second one in rural zones? Should we have higher density than 3.5 acres? Give a feel of what that looks like. What should we do with multifamily? We don't allow it anywhere. A half a dozen very pointed things specifically about potential zoning changes, and have a pointed conversation. Focus on 6 great slides.
Well, like in here.
And we could talk to people for housing for 5 hours. I wouldn't have things like that not about that. I wouldn't have HUD fair market rents. I would have a focus intro about housing situation, maybe something about zoning, and at least a half a dozen very pointed, very precise, very simple pictures. And that's where your discussion is. Right now, we don't allow detached ADUs in town zones. Do you think we should? This is what they look like. Should we allow a second ADU in our outlying zones? This is what it looks like. Right now we don't allow multifamily anywhere. What do you think? This is what attractive multifamily.
What are you
I think those would be.
What are you
because
suggesting should be taken out?
What's supposed to be the focus of this presentation? Because it suddenly shifted gears. It started out as one thing and shifted gears to another, and
I'm not sure.
I got lost in there, so I don't know which gear we're supposed to be playing with.
The focus here is to explain the housing situation in the state and to explain why we're justified in creating housing in Durham. Then to go on and explain the different options.
You've got 2 different separate half-hour conversations there.
Well, we have to do, then I'm not sure what people.
That's just my opinion, but I think that's what you're going to find out.
So I think I
I
said
don't
this at
think
the
so.
beginning of the meeting. In an SB2 town, this is supposed to build support. So when you put your warrant article in your March thing, people vote for it. That's what most of this is about. So the focus really is, and I think Michael has kind of laid it out, these are like what the planning board, these are the ideas we think are good. Do you support them?
Yeah.
Do you support, workforce housing overlay? And this is what we're thinking. Do you support detached ADUs? Do you support multifamily housing, like these pictures? And then you're supposed to be gauging what you think you successfully can pass.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The reason we're struggling is because you take that for granted, because you're going to only come around this table to 9 people. You aren't going to the community to ask them to vote on this.
Wait, are you saying that we need to be pointed about these are half dozen potential zoning changes, or that we should have a broader
No.
discussion
I
to get community buy-in about
Our
housing?
this focus here is not to sell them on. This is to ask them, what do you think?
Yeah.
This is a reality. What do you think? This is our.
They don't know anything about zoning.
They
You
don't
have to
need
give
to-
them something very precise to react to.
We did. They don't need to know anything. This is a picture of a multifamily house. This is a picture of what infill might look like. This is a picture of a detached ADU. So what do you think? What do you
Yeah.
think? Do you think that would be okay?
So I think it's important to, the
might
setup, we
say
have to
no.
set up the we have to set up the
Yeah,
education
it's a
piece.
conversation.
The dollar piece, I think, should be left where it is then, because it doesn't fit anywhere else. It's there to explain to people that have lived in their houses for 40 years that this is the costs that are facing, that are
This is
challenging to
reality.
So if,
workforce housing.
I'm going to go back to
And then
saying,
you got the
you've got an hour presentation there. If you only have 30 minutes, you got to cut it in
Yeah, but why is
half.
it that we only have 30 minutes?
We'll
Well,
be
it depends
fine.
who you're,
We'll be
because
fine.
they're,
Everybody else gets
We'll be
the
fine.
boards that you could potentially talk to are again, not related to housing, but I can reach out to them and say, we want to get input from groups, you're knowledgeable, would you give us a half hour, maybe 45 minutes? Energy, agriculture, historic district, conservation commission, integrated waste management, parks and recreation.
Land stewardship.
Yeah, you can do land stewardship. They're going to say,
Parks and
why are you coming to us? Say, well, we want to get feedback.
part
You
of our
guys are
outreach.
engaged community members. Can you give us a half hour?
I don't think
And-
they're gonna be, listen, I think the whole idea, this is outreach. We are not trying to sell them on I get what you're saying, Michael, but I don't wanna go in and say, these are our changes. I don't wanna come in there and say, these are changes we could make. I wanna hear, what do you think about this in our community? Would you wanna see this in our community? What would be your concern if it was, or what would be your,
See, that's better done in a community forum than going to our
But
our
this
board.
is-
We said that we were going
committees.
to do this instead of that,
we're
because we
doing,
didn't put the money in to have the group thing.
yeah, and we're getting to a point where we have to get going on this.
Yeah.
And I think we discussed what is the easiest way to reach people right off the bat. Doing this, and then again, if people have some groups of people that they would like to sit down, we can sit down. I think if each person around here contacted a friend and say, hey, can we come to your house and can you invite 6 people and let's sit there and talk about housing, and then we just talk about it and start getting we support housing. We have to come to, if we're gonna get changes made, we have to bring to the council proof that people support it, other than just the naysayers that are gonna come in and
I
say
think the
no.
other thing that's important is that, we're going to the Ag Commission, but they have opinions, and
They have
we're
opinions.
using, and they have other people they might then talk to about, hey, we
They're
had
people we never see.
Sally and Heather at the meeting last night, and hey, this is what they're doing on the
Yeah.
housing task force, and they're
Yeah.
asking questions.
It-
If you want to start talking about this is, would you do 2 ADUs, this is what it looked like. To me, that's when we're starting to talk more about the zoning, and
And that's
that
what
may end up
telling
needing
them.
to be more related to the planning board.
I don't want
But-
to be telling
Right, so
them.
you're thinking of having just a more general discussion about
Yes.
housing?
Yes, that's the
Yes.
outreach about housing.
I mean,
We're not trying to sell.
Nell did this with Sustainable Durham. She went around to every, I would not, you only got half an hour, so you gotta be succinct.
I
It's
think we
like,
could do this in half an hour,
You know?
because
We
right now
can.
we talked about every slide with this, you know,
Detail.
in detail, I think it's probably a.
Yeah, we can do this quickly.
I mean,
And if there's no comments, then they're just like, oh, okay, thanks. Then it's definitely gonna be a half hour. If they're interested, it may go farther, and they'll be fine with that, because they're the ones controlling controlling the agenda.
I think you want to get their feedback, because the whole idea should be like, you may come out of going to all these committees and they say, you know what? We love the idea of attached AD or detached
Yeah.
ADUs. And that should hopefully, again, that was back to my point, what you think you can pass. When you looked at like the other HOP grant people, what they did is they did this first before they were generating the zoning.
Yeah, we
And so
can.
they were like, okay, you know what? People love ADUs. People like this, people like that. That's what that's what we think we can pass. That's what we're gonna focus in on. So I think you're trying to get and that's what is the
We're
problem.
trying to get feedback from people.
Yeah, the problem
We're
we
not trying
have
to
in this
sell them on
community is
anything.
that because you have, the voters have delegated their authority to the town council, while you do have public meetings and that, you're not going, it's different. You're like, well, how do we do outreach and all this stuff? If you're like having to go to the voters and put this on a March ballot, trust me, you're gonna have some pretty strong outreach to people. And I think getting a sense of what some of your influential people on committees and commissions think, I think if you go to conservation, they're going to tell you a lot of things.
They're going to tell us a lot. We're
And
gonna
if you
hear
go
stuff.
to like
Yeah.
other ones, they'll tell you, and hopefully that helps shape what the community thinks is good.
And it could also quelch some concerns and fears. Because we're not trying to sell them on anything. We're trying to say, what do you think about this? Would you want to do more? And we have to get moving on it. And the reason why, you know, going to the boards and committees is because it's a captive audience. We can get on their agenda and we can start talking to them about it. Then we can start talking about some other outreach. But we got to get going on this. We can't keep waiting.
Now, what's your
And-
time
and-
frame? That's Michael's
and
thing.
I would like to have, especially if we are going to have a draft. Michael, did you have something to say before I move on? Okay. Especially if the planning board is going to be moving forward on a draft proposal, that's going to hit the community, and we need to start having some outreach. We can't continue to go ahead and say, okay, we went out there and we talked to people about having a second ADU, and there was no one wanted that. No, we had gut reactions against it. Or we went out there and we talked about having, you know, detached or a second ADU, and we had overwhelming support for it. There wasn't a person at any of these committees or commissions that said no to it. So let's push that forward. Infill, people they bid off. They said, yeah, let's do some smaller or some greater density maybe in B, but not in A. I don't know, you know what I mean? Talking about, this is where we're gonna get these ideas so that we can say, okay, based on what people said, we're going to make this recommendation in here, and this is why we're making that recommendation, because of what the feedback we got from these people. That's the point of this.
Can I ask Eileen, who's often quiet and has a lot of wisdom, can you give your perspective? I just have a sense you probably have a good view of the whole thing.
I think what Sally's getting at, that this is an opportunity to listen. We're hoping to listen to what others in the community say. This is a fast way to reach a diverse group of people. I do think some of the prompts might send you down some rabbit holes. So maybe you do one presentation and
see how it goes.
Change the questions. I would almost have the last slide just be questions, feedback,
Yeah.
and see what happens. And some groups don't think a lot about housing and won't have much to say, and that's fine. And other groups will have very strong opinions, and you'll get that feedback.
They're going to have opinions based on their concerns.
So I don't know if you need to
Yeah.
bullet out, what do you think about this thing we talked about? What do you think about this thing we talked about? Just let it be a conversation.
Conservation and ag are going to be all about what land are you using?
Yeah.
Well, and that's just the point, but that's what we want to hear. So where would you want to see
I'm just
it?
saying.
I know it. I understand.
You know,
I know that.
Because Ag Commission is going to say, you know, if it's a high fertile soil where we should be growing food, you shouldn't be building on it.
Well, then, so
Then
it's,
we'll
well,
write it down.
where would
Which
it make
is
sense?
going to strike down detached ADUs, because most of our RA zones are on high fertile zones.
No, just to,
No.
just to stop.
No.
They came and spoke at the meeting about the lot on Route 4 and said that that is prime agricultural soil. And it was noted, the
Yeah.
trade-off between are we going to devote this land to farming, which may
Yeah.
or may not happen ever, or are we going to devote it to workforce housing, was taken into consideration, and I think the community broadly accepts that workforce housing is better use of this land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for
But it does open up the door, right? It should allow them to open up the conversation about us allowing the open space on these developments to be used for food.
because if they're going to complain about something, no matter what, we gotta actually.
Well, can
move
I
on.
make a
They're
suggestion?
let me just finish. They're going to come across and have concerns no matter when. So I would rather have a talk before
Yeah.
we institute the changes.
Yeah.
And that's
Well, the
point.
Conservation Commission, I'm the staff to two of these, the Conservation Commission and the HDC. The Conservation Commission meets in 2 weeks, on the 22nd, and the HDC meets on August 1st. How about if I reach out to those two chairs and ask them if Sally can come to the meeting?
And some other people.
And anyone else who wants, and present it. And that way, those will be like test runs.
Yeah.
I think the chair, and I explained to the chair, we can talk about conservation, we'd rather, your residents, we'd rather talk about housing. Try to put your housing hat on and have that, give us a half hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah, because we don't necessarily want feedback on your mission at the ag. You're people, you live in
Yeah,
town.
exactly.
It's not just about what you would say with that hat on. I think that's a
Yeah,
perfect way
it's-
to put it.
Should I, because
The
I
other
know
thing
people,
is,
it's noon.
With Farm Day coming up, we might not be able to get the Ag Commission
Well,
in.
why don't we find out when we can get on their
Well,
agenda?
so the AgCom, if,
I would say-
why don't we do
Michael,
those two?
Why don't we start, what I would like you to do, Michael, is just get what you can and try to get us on as all of the agendas going into July, August, and September.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
July, August, and September, find time to get on every single agenda
Yeah.
and explain to them, this is part of the Housing Task Force outreach. We want to just talk to you about housing and why, but because it is getting late, we have to actually start.
Yeah, that's good. So that's 6 committees, and the first 2, I'm staff to, so that'll be easier. Conservation Commission, HDC, and then in August, we have Ag Commission, Energy, IMAG, Parks and Rec.
See what you can do.
All right.
Yeah. See what you
And
can
so
do.
Sally will be there for the...
And whoever else
and
wants to
whoever else
come.
wants to come?
I'm not going alone. If nobody else volunteers, I'll pick somebody to come in.
I should be able to help you out with all
Well, I'll be at Conservation and
I'm
HDC.
more than willing to show up.
And I'm on the HDC.
Yeah. Right.
So this, yeah, I think
Just-
whoever
I
can
might better
show
ride
up would
tonight.
be great.
I mean, I think it's good because hopefully you'll have gone through, if Sally's timeline follows, by the time you guys are introducing your finalized thing, hopefully you've
We'll
run
have some
through a lot of
feedback.
committees.
Yeah, and we'll have some feedback.
Judith has her hand up.
Okay, Judith, what's up?
Great, yes, I like what people were talking about a minute ago. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
I think that it would be important for the people who are making the presentation to have decided ahead of time how the conversation is gonna be
Yeah.
constructed. That we are here to talk about housing. We know that you have interest in land use, and we're looking forward to talking to you about that as our next step. And the same thing for the historic district people and for the ag people.
Yeah, I agree. Because we want to focus in on what their concerns are, because they represent the town in these different areas. So what are their concerns going forward? We're going to be hit with it at some point. So the Housing Task Force can take the time to have that conversation. All right, you got your.
I was
So
going to
that-
move to adjourn,
Okay.
actually.
I think
so
we're
now we're
moving
gonna miss
forward.
the workforce update.
So, but first of all,
that's hard.
can we make a decision that we're going to go forward with this?
So I've got
Yeah.
7, including land stewardship. We can even do the TRG, which is staff.
Let's do, that would be
TRG.
great.
More the
That's-
merrier.
What? That's 8. Again, Parks and Rec, all of them. We're
Yeah,
asking you to
all
put your
of them.
housing hat on.
We're all of them because they are human beings that live in this town.
Right, exactly.
So
Exactly.
we all
And they're a
agree
captive
we can move
audience.
forward with this to make it official.
So that's 8 boards I'm going to reach
Yeah.
out to.
Okay, so we're doing it. Anybody
Yeah.
object? Okay. I'll take a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in oh, you got one more thing?
Wait, we're adjourning or we're taking a motion to do this?
Do we have to vote to do this?
No.
No.
No,
We're
we're
adjourning.
taking to
Yes.
adjourn.
Am I seconding?
You're
Yes, you
voting.
are, 30.
30, whatever.
Yes? How about our Judith, adjourn, Michael, adjourn?
Yes.
Yes.
I have one another
Okay.
sheet. I have one last thing to say, and that is, can we combine some of these?
The presentations?
Oh, the groups.
No,
Well, they
that
have
would be
their
tough.
They have their
No,
own.
no,
Yeah.
that would be
Separately.
tough.
And,
Yeah, we
and I
have to.
won't be able to go to any of the meetings except conservation and HPC.
It'll be fine,
so-
it'll be fine.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Okay.
adjourn?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.